Welcome to the Smarter Sales Show, the weekly tech tips and technique tune-up for everyone who sells, whether they want to or not, and with a special focus on virtual selling. I'm Julie Holmes, and every week I'll share cool sales tech with you that will help you to sell smarter. And I'm joined by my awesome co-host, Merritt Khan, who will give you specific sound bites and sales techniques so that you can stress less and get into action. We're continuing our series of 4 episodes on prospecting. This 4-pack. Right now, we're on an episode focused on cool tools and tech that we are going to share with you from a technique perspective. Before we get started, you should know that we pack a ton of bonus content into every single episode, and we put all of that content on a resources page, free, yes, free to you. So click on the link in the show notes or in the attachment section, depending on where you're viewing this awesome bit of content. And if you're watching us on the Internet TV's Sales Expert channel, just watch for it in the description and the comments. Ready, set, let's get smarter in sales. Let's do it.
Absolutely. I think this is one of those topics that everybody asks me all the time, right? They know that they have to do prospecting. They want to talk to prospects. They're always concerned about, what do I say? Last week in the episode where you focused on technology, we learned about so many cool tech tools that we could use to help make prospecting easier, but all of that just opens the door. And then once you're there, what do I say? Right?
Do you have the answer for that? Because that is the answer that I have been looking for. I didn't know you had the holy grail of prospecting, Merritt. I'm in. Sign me up.
I do. I have the holy grail. But first, there's 2 questions that need to get answered before you go to the what do I say part. And here's the problem with that, because, the problem with getting too focused on what do I say as the first step is that we might create a wrong message. We might, if we're not really clear about who we're going after, who's the ideal prospect, then we're probably going to miss the mark and just talk a little bit more in generalizations as opposed to the specificity that an ideal prospect needs to really identify that we are a good match. And the second problem is, let me ask you this, Julie. How do you feel about starting projects that don't have an end to them?
Oh my gosh, it's awful. It's never done. It's a bit like cleaning my house.
Right, exactly.
It's hard to get excited to clean my house because it's just never ending.
Yeah.
Not my house, but I just mean the stuff that needs to be cleaned.
I got you. Yeah. That's how I feel about my basement. So, it's like that place where everything just gets thrown into the basement. And then someday I will deal with that. And that is actually never going to happen. It's one of those projects that just doesn't have an end. And as human beings, we like completion. So when you look at prospecting, let's face it, there's always one more prospect to add to the pipeline. There's always one more call to make, one more dollar to chase. Mm-hmm. And so if we constantly feel like it's never enough, it's really hard to get started. So that's where we kind of have to manage our mindset a little bit. And I'm going to give you a strategy that I use to do exactly that so that you do know when enough is enough. And that's really the 2 things that we need to consider before we even touch what do you say.
Okay. Know when enough is enough. All right. What's the secret sauce to knowing when enough is enough?
Well, I'm going to go back. I'm going to do the other piece first. So I want to talk about.
Oh my gosh. Now you're teasing me. Okay.
I know.
Right.
I'm so excited with when's enough. Hold that thought. But first, okay. I want to tell you a little bit about how do you know who is really the ideal prospect, right? So the thing is that the more you know about who your best prospects are, the easier it will be to speak directly to their concerns. And when you're thinking about how much is enough, when is enough, because you're very specific about your ideal prospect, you'll know exactly where to go using the tools that you taught us last week. And you probably need fewer prospects in your pipeline because you're more targeted. So that's why who is the right person and when's enough, the 2 things that you want to do before we talk about what do we say. So
yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning, Merritt, that at least in my experience, and I guess I'd be interested to hear if you have the same experience as well, which is that while people say that they know who their ideal prospect is, they're really speaking generally. Like, I generally know who might be interested in my product. And I'm a bit like you, like I'm going to cut every person from my list long before I call them. Like if I only have energy to call 10 people, then they had better be the 10 most perfect people ever.
Yes, that's a great point, right? Because we don't have endless time and we don't have endless energy. So let's stop wasting it on people that really aren't our ideal prospects. Now there's there's three, but let's focus on two ways that you can really identify your ideal prospects right out of the gate. So first there's demographics, right? And that's the low-hanging fruit. That's the obvious one, right? Things like geography and age or education level, things like that.
Company size, sure.
Exactly. Revenues, all of that, demographics. Then there's what we call psychographics. That's going to be more like, what do they value? What are their attitudes? What are their...
I love psychographics. I just want to stop you there because I'm chuckling on the inside. You know, like I would admit that some of my prospects in the past have definitely felt very psycho. All right, there we go. That was my throwaway joke for the show. All right, I'll behave now. Okay, psychographics. Yep.
Psychographics. Now, psychographics are important because there's a very big difference between two people that can look very similar from a demographic standpoint. For example, let's say my neighbor is also an entrepreneur, business owner, an amazing looking 50-year-old woman. Let's just say
nice neighborhood,
right? Don't you want to move in? So let's just say demographically, we look the same. Okay. Graduated from a similar school, similar degrees, right? Now, on my back deck, I enjoy taking my yoga mat, not when we have 3 feet of snow like we do today in Denver, but sometimes in the summer, I'll take my yoga mat on my back deck and I'll do my meditation, where she might be having a wild barbecue for 50 people on her back deck. We may look the same from a demographic standpoint, but our values, our habits, our interests are different. Okay. And so what we want to do when we're really looking for our ideal prospects is start to peel back some of those layers and look for some of those things in that psychographic category that distinguishes somebody as a much better prospect than just the typical demographic things. So I look for, if you're going to enroll in sales training programs or things like that, I need you to be open-minded. So how might I distinguish a prospect who is open-minded from one who thinks they know it all? Well, open-minded people listen to podcasts. Open-minded people read blogs. Open-minded people attend seminars and educational events, right? So I'm going to do my best prospecting, fishing in those ponds where people who think like my prospects gather.
Okay. And if you're selling B2B merit, are you looking for the psychographics of a single person, or are you looking at the psychographics of a team or a leader? Like when you've got a bigger organization, how does that fit in?
Okay, that is a great question because individuals are very hard to predict, but groups are extremely easy. So we want to group our prospects into some like
cohorts.
Yeah, cohort, perfect word. So if we can identify that, people who listen to sales teams that go, that use these specific kinds of tools and technology in their business are also going to be good prospects for us. And I think you even mentioned that in last week's episode. Was that last week's episode?
Yep.
So that's an example of, a cohort is using these kinds of tools. They're going to these kinds of events. They're reading these kinds of books. They're following these kinds of influencers. Those are some different ways that you can identify the psychographics of a group, and it's easier to market to a group because there's always going to be that outlier individual within a group, and that's going to be a little harder to find.
Okay. So is it kind of like an if then? So if X, Y, if so-and-so likes this, they'll like me.
Exactly.
If they buy this, they'll buy my stuff.
Exactly. Right. Amazon does that to us all the time. Like,
oh my gosh, yeah.
People who bought this.
And it works.
Yeah, it surely does. There's one other thing that you want to consider when you're really looking at your ideal prospects, and that is a trigger event. And we actually are going to be talking about this, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about this in next week's episode with our amazing guest interview, Sam Richter, who looks at specific prospecting event or trigger events and helps us identify through a technology solution how we can find companies that are our ideal prospects based on certain trigger events, like promotion to somebody got promoted to sales director, somebody's looking to hire new salespeople. Great. Those are trigger events. And if we've got a product or service that speaks to that event, then we know that's going to be an ideal prospect. So the other thing is, sometimes ideal prospects are situational. So somebody might not be an ideal prospect for me all the time, but I might have one offer that based on a trigger event makes somebody an ideal prospect for a defined period of time while they're going through that trigger event. So for example, they just opened a new office, let's say a new warehouse, and they need to hire a lot of people. They need to staff up for a specific location. And I'm a staffing agency. That's a trigger event for a defined period of time. At some point, that's not going to be an ideal prospect because they've completed the event that had them be a good prospect for me. Now, then they're going to move on, right?
That's a great point, Merritt, because if I think about a lot of the industries that you and I work with, real estate professionals, insurance brokers, financial advisors, like all of those could definitely be leveraging trigger events, whether that's relocation, whether that's, having a child, whether that's retirement, right? Those are all trigger events.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you're going to go through those kinds of things like they have a beginning, middle, and an end. So you know how to speak to somebody who's dealing with some frustrations during that kind of period of time.
Got it. That's really, really good. Okay, so I think that's awesome, right? So we've got kind of 3 things that we should be looking at when it comes to deciding who our prospects are. But it would be really helpful as part of that?
What?
Having a place to put it all, which is why we love our sponsor for this 4-pack, which is Speaker Flow CRM. Okay, that was totally shameless. It was totally shameless. But it was like a decent segue, really. No, in all seriousness, because that is exactly the kind of information that you and I capture in our CRM system. We both use Speaker Flow CRM. Obviously, we're fans. But I think that is, when it comes to the tech that will help you keep track of all of those triggers and for you to be able to monitor and capture them, I think that's brilliant. And particularly for prospecting, and this is one of the things that we used our CRM for, was when I had business development or have business development resources who are doing outbound calls for me and working like that, then I have set up special fields in my CRM where those biz dev resources can actually track what's happening with each one of those prospects and flag those triggers. So shout out to Speakerflow CRM. Awesome sauce. And of course, there's a link for that. And we're really grateful for them sponsoring us and encourage you to check that out if you are a solopreneur. While it's built for speakers, the concepts remain the same regardless of what kind of technology you use. So make sure you're leveraging your CRM when it comes to prospecting. Back to you, Merritt.
Well, thank you. And actually, it's such a good segue because one of the other tools that Speakerflow CRM offers, and it's a free resource on their site, and I believe we also have it in our on our free resources page for this 4-pack on prospecting. They have a tool called a revenue calculator, and this brings me into a nice tie-in for message number 2, which is how do you know when is enough, or when is enough enough, right?
Got my pen at the ready. Please tell me that I can stop.
Yes. Okay. So the first thing is you want to go to this revenue tool. Now, their tool is, again, it's built for speakers. So it's based on, what is your speaking fee and how many events do you want to do? Look, you can modify that so that their automated tool gives you the numbers that you need. And just think about it. What's your average deal size and things like that. And you'll be able to use this free resource that they have. Now, we talked about never-ending tasks are hard to start. So knowing where your finish line is, you want to track your progress, and also you want to be able to celebrate your forward movement. Now, the philosophy that I have followed for 20 plus years is called the rule of 450s.
Okay.
All right, start your pens. The rule of 450s. Now, this is just going to be average. You might have better closing ratios in one area and not as good in another area, but as a general rule, the rule of 450s is a great place to start. So I want to start with, imagine 50% of the leads that I put in at the top of my pipeline are going to listen to my pitch, right?
Okay.
50% is just going to even hear my little elevator pitch. 50% of the ones who listen to the pitch will set an appointment. 50% of the people who set an appointment will advance to a real opportunity. And then 50% of those real opportunities will turn into money. So that's the rule of 450s: pitch, appointment, opportunity, money. And when you think about, so you can think about it from a couple of different angles, right? You can say, okay, how much money do I want to make this year? Well, I know that if my average deal is, let's say I want to make $100,000. Okay, now I'm about to do math on the fly. This may not work well, but let's say
I've already done the math for the numbers, so I'll do your math.
Okay, let's say I want to make $100,000. I need to, and my average deal is $10,000. So I need 10 prospects. I need 10 clients. So that means I need 20 to be at the opportunity stage. I need 40 appointments, and I need 80 to listen to the pitch. Did I get those numbers right?
Which means you need 160 prospects.
Exactly, because that first 50, maybe it's the rule of 550s, but that first level is...
Well, that's your 100.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So when you look at it like that, most of the time when I go through that exercise with clients, what they first experience is that sense of relief. Like,
yeah,
wait, there's an end to it. Like, all I need is 160 on the top, and then my numbers work out. Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
Right? And it gives you a little sense of calm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you just think about it, right, 160, right? And maybe I'll try and do the math, but like, okay, let's just say that you've got 160, and I'm literally breaking out my phone right now because, like I'm not going to do this and get it wrong and then have people message me. But basically that's just 3 a week.
Right?
And if I take some vacation, right? Not that anybody who's in sales ever really goes on vacation, but let's just say for the sake of argument that we take 4 weeks off a year, that's still just 3.3 a week.
Yeah.
Like, so if I bring in if I add 4 prospects into my list, into my funnel, I only have to convert 2 of those every week. I only have to get 2 people to listen to my pitch every week. And then the numbers just work out. Man, okay, I'm just going to, my mind's a little blown by that. That's amazing.
Now, here's why I like that revenue calculator that Speaker Flow guys put together, because it allows you to make adjustments. So you can play with it. Like, maybe you want to look and see how many prospects would I need if my average deal was $5,000 instead of 10.
Yeah.
Or $20,000 instead of 10, right? So you can slide the numbers and play with things a little bit so that you can look at different scenarios, and then you can see what's realistic based on your timeline and how much time and energy and maybe how many prospects really are in the world that you are serving. Maybe you're super, super niched, but it's a good way to feel like there's a finish line to your prospecting. And I think it's hard to get started with prospecting. It's a mindset game, and we're defeated before we start when it feels like it's a never-ending task.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely brilliant. Genius.
Okay. Well, thanks. So the other reason, the one other reason why knowing when enough is so important before you go on to creating your messaging is because you're more likely to add the specificity to your messaging when you have discovered for yourself that you don't need everyone on the planet who can fog a mirror, right? So
Great. I'm just going to take that visual with me when I go.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of us, we're in sales, we love our products and services. We really want to help people. That's why we're in this profession. And we really do think that our stuff can help a lot of people. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when the world is your ideal target, it's really hard to speak that to them in the language that will have them recognize that they can benefit from your offers. It's not a matter so much of us knowing that we're perfect for them. It's about them discovering that we can help. And the only way that they'll do that is with the specificity of message. So that's point number 3, which is really getting clear on a meaningful message. And that's, again, the part that everybody wants to start with. But I promise you, if you do those first 2 parts first, you'll craft a better message. So get clear on who's ideal, get clear on how much is enough. Is enough. Why can't I even say that? Well, get clear on when is enough.
Not to be confused with 8 is enough, which was a very, 1980s lives on. Go on.
Well, it turns out that 8 wasn't enough because now we have all these other shows with all the 16 kids and the 20.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So who knew?
I think I preferred the non-reality version better.
Agreed. So let's talk about figuring out the meaningful message. So, you have to make sure that your message cuts through all that prospecting clutter. And for it to do that, your message has to have meaning to your prospects. Now, how many times have you heard people say, I'll give you 2 examples of how I might introduce myself whether we were at an in-person networking event or, I'm introducing myself over email or a podcast or whatever it is, right? All the different ways we introduce ourselves. If I say to you, my name is Merritt. I co-host a podcast, The Smarter Sales Show. I love what I do. I have a great co-host. We love working with salespeople. We've been doing this for a while. It's fun, right? That's like who is it about? It's all about me. And you can't connect with that. There's nothing in it for you in that context. But if I say, my name is Merritt, I'm co-host of the Smarter Sales Show. Every week we are doing episodes that save sales professionals, business owners, entrepreneurs from all kinds of sales frustrations. Like they're so good at what they do, but it should be easier to close deals. And in this virtual world, everything's different now and they're frustrated. I don't know if that's your situation, but this show would be for you, right? That's a much different way. Now they can see themselves in that message and now they know to tune into the show.
Yeah.
So that's an example. See, your message only matters if it's meaningful to them. So going back to the rule of 450s, if we want to go from all the 160 in the pipeline to the 80 we need to hear our pitch, we've got to that's that first piece. That's the messaging that's going to get them to listen to the offer that you have. And so the key here is, first of all, don't try to pretend you're not making a sales call when you're making a sales call.
Even I'm just calling to see how you're doing, Merritt. We've never spoken before, but I'm just super concerned about your welfare.
Right. Yeah. No pass. Don't do that. That's just cheesy and they see right through it. So all of the old school thing, I'm going to be in your area, is Tuesday or Thursday better? Like that doesn't even make any sense. You're going to be in my area twice. What's the urgency? Like we kind of jumbled up all these like old ways of getting to a prospect's attention, and they don't make sense together and they don't work. So my rule of thumb is always be straight up honest. Like if I am literally making cold calls, I will literally say, hey, I'm making a cold call. I don't, I could tell you in 60 seconds why I'm calling. If you want to hang up after that, do you want to hang up now? And they'll laugh because it's different and it's honest. And most of them will just listen to the pitch. Now, if I take that precious glorious gift of a moment and their attention, and I say some nonsense like I run a podcast that, is fun, that's fun to do, I've lost it. But if I take that golden opportunity and I connect with something specific to what's important to them, and I'm clear about not just the demographics, but the psychographics, then I have an opportunity to close them for the next step, which is I just want an appointment. So I think, prospecting, I'm looking at it from the context of cold prospecting. And we talked in other episodes about reaching out to people who are maybe you've done business with in the past or their current clients, and you're literally prospecting for future opportunities within an existing relationship. That's another way of prospecting. But there too, the same rules apply in that you have to talk about what's meaningful to them. So if I was talking with an existing client and I want to upsell or expand the relationship, I might say, a lot of people that, we've been working together for a while and I love our relationship. I'm so glad I've been able to help you. And thank you for all the compliments on, this project that we've been doing. And a lot of people that we started with doing similar project went on to do these other things. They got to this point, they really had a lot of success, and then they were ready for this next level. And I'm wondering, are you open to
love it.
a conversation about some of the other things that we do that might really help you advance with what's important to you?
Yeah, I think I actually want to take us back just a couple of minutes, Merritt, because you said something that I had not really thought about. And I might have known at one point or have, forgotten, because this is the challenge with sales, right? This is why we always have to be refreshing our sales skills. But, you said that, on this first call, your goal is just to get them to listen to the pitch and then to maybe make an appointment.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's really interesting. And that's another benefit of this 450s is that all you have to do is get them to the next stage. Yes. Like it takes a huge amount of pressure off to go, look, I'm not trying to actually sell to everybody I get on the phone. That's actually not what I'm trying to do. I'm actually just trying to get them to the next stage.
Right. Which is really, that's just a qualifier, right? Because when I initially start my prospecting at the top of the funnel, I actually don't know if we're a good match to do business together. And there might be a variety of reasons. So, trigger events being one of those reasons. Maybe they're on the heels of some big trigger event. I'm calling and, on this date, and 2 weeks from now, they've got a big thing, and that's going to make us not a good match for a defined period of time, but maybe at some point later we are. So I think, my mindset is always, and I'm always encouraging my clients, just go in with a real curiosity rather than an objective, and you're closing for an appointment to have a conversation to really qualify or disqualify that as an opportunity, because you don't know yet if you're a good fit. You don't know yet that you should or shouldn't do business together. So it's just little steps.
What do you think, Merritt, if sales leaders were to actually start to keep track of qualified and unqualified? Like, I could imagine that would actually be really good for a sales team to be, not treating them as prospects that have fallen out of the pipeline, but prospects that have been actively qualified out of the pipeline. That is an accomplishment as much as qualifying in is qualifying out. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, you've heard 100 different times in different ways, a no is your one no closer to the yes and all of that. I think we don't track that. It's an interesting idea to really track that deliberately. What I do know, I think about, back in the days when I was a sales manager managing a whole sales force of a radio station, and every week I would have meetings with my sales reps, and we would talk about, how many calls they made and how many of those turned into appointments. And so we would go through this rule of 450s. And what that allowed me to do as a manager was adjust my coaching so that was really applicable for them. So I knew if their numbers were off, if they were having if they were doing a lot of pitches and weren't getting at least 50% turning into appointments, there was something wrong with the pitch. If they were getting appointments, but they weren't turning into opportunities, they weren't really either two steps back, right? Either they weren't calling on the right people to begin with, but if they weren't turning into opportunities, it's more likely something about that qualify or disqualify step that wasn't quite smooth yet. And then if they were, opportunities, but they didn't turn into clients, well, is that a money issue? Is that a decision maker issue, right? So it allowed me as a manager or director to better coach each individual based on looking at the real data. And I think that's a real, otherwise we're just going off, how a salesperson feels about how that call went, or how they feel about how much prospecting they're doing. But if you're not tracking that with actual data, you have absolutely no idea. Oh, we always feel like we're doing more than we actually are.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, this has been a cracker of an episode, Merritt. You should be feeling very smug right now, because you and I talk about sales all the time, and I listen to you. I do. I swear I do. But this particular episode has been a real eye-opener for me. Like a real, wow, oh, I never thought about it that way. And dang, I need to get back to some of these basics, even though, like you, right, I've been, in this game for a long time. Not that long, because we're still quite young, but long enough. But here's my winner for this. I mean, I'm still reeling. I'm still leaning back and thinking. You can't see my arms are crossed. I'm thinking about this. That 450s thing is genius. Really, really genius. And in fact, you know what I'm going to do? Here's what I'm going to do for you, Merritt. I'm actually going to make a Google sheet when we finish this episode, and I'm going to put it into our resources for everybody, so that if you wanted to go in and play with your own 450s, you can just put in your number down at the bottom, and I'll set it up so that you can put in what's your average deal size and how much do you want to earn. And then I'll have it calculate back up and tell you what you should be doing every week.
I love that.
Yeah. So look, a little tech there to make it all fancy schmancy for you, because that is absolute pure genius. And do you have a challenge that you want to set? Because mine would be dang, go figure out your 450s, everybody. But what would your challenge be to everybody, Merritt?
I'm good with that. I really am good with that. I think, it's the three pieces are: know who your ideal target is, really get clear on that. Get clear on when is enough, and use the spreadsheet that Julie is about to create. Amazing. And then work on your messaging and making sure that message speaks to their pain. Use an emotional word: frustration, overwhelm, fed up. That's how your prospect will relate to the message that you share.
Well, and I will, you know what? Again, I'll add to the resources my favorite Power Words website, because I love, these are called Power Words, right? And you can trigger a lot of emotions through Power Words. And one of my favorite Power Words websites, which is from Opt-in Monster, actually has Power Words all broken down by what emotion you're trying to trigger. Are you trying to trigger greed or sloth, which means easy? I mean, it's really fun to go and have a look at these Power Words. So I'll put that resource out there too. So, allow me an hour, everybody. Power Words. Got it writing down on my list of things to do, but that's a great resource anytime you're doing an email or a call or whatever. It's awesome. So that kind of tees us up then for next week, because here's the Power Word for next week: awesome, easy, mind-blowing, top secret, super technifying, because next week we have an amazing interview with our friend Sam Richter, who is widely known as a sales prospecting genius. He is awesome. He is the creator of the Sales Intel Engine, and as you are going to walk away with some serious tips that are not only going to help you prospect easier and understand how to prospect easier, but you can also kind of hear about some technology that can help you do it too. And I'm a client of Sam's, so I use Sam's technology, and it is brilliant. And I'm so excited about this conversation that we're going to have with him, because it's awesome, and he's a super great guy to boot.
Absolutely. And we would love to hear from you. We would love to hear what questions you have that you would like us to answer on future episodes of the show. So once we're done with next week's episode with Sam, that's going to wrap up our 4-pack on prospecting. And then we're going to talk about relationships and long distance relationships and virtual relationships. And we would love to know, what questions do you have about how to build strong virtual relationships in today's day and age? What's working for you? What's not? So let's get you involved, and we will answer your questions. And also, we'd love to hear your reviews of the show. Give us that 5-star rating, to connect with us on LinkedIn, and definitely don't forget to grab that free resources content that we put into the show notes and the attachments on Bright Talk.
As always, if you are looking to ask us some specific questions, or if you're wanting to know how you can work with us, because we get that question a lot as well. So maybe you need a tech tune-up for your sales team, or you need some amazing sales training, or even just a bit of laughter and motivation for an in-person live sales kickoff event, whatever it is. If you want to bring all or part of the Smarter Sales Show to your team, then drop us a note. You can contact us at hello@thesmartersalesshow.com. And you can check out our website, also thesmartersalesshow.com, because that's how the internet works. It's super fancy like that.
Well, that's it for today's episode. So you have two action items. Number one, register right now for next week's episode so you don't miss that interview with Sam. And number two, no more excuses. Now get started on that prospecting.
It's great. I'm Julie Holmes.
And I'm Merritt Khan.
And you've been listening to the Smarter Sales Show. See you next time.